We are on chapter 11 in the book of Numbers. Up until this time, we hadn't really heard anything in Numbers about the people complaining. Well, that ends tonight. Chapter 11, the people start complaining.
Well, before that, it was all about whose son was who.
Yeah, and it's telling the different amount of people in each area and all that thing. So that portion from 1 to 10 was kind of like a little, in my opinion, it probably should have been a different book, separate, from, and then the rest of Numbers could have been interspersed in Exodus and Leviticus, some way. But anyway, that's the way it was written.
I started reading the book of Luke, and the same thing happened. The first chapter or two was all names. I'm going like, I am now confused.
They have to establish a hierarchy or a genealogy, and they do that.
That's what made me think of it too. Oh man.
Yeah.
The first few books of Numbers and the first few books of Luke, I'm going like, gosh, I'm confused.
Verse 1. Now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, for the Lord heard it, and his anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some in the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried out to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So he called the name of the place Terabah. I'll fess up, I ran off and left my lesson, so I printed this off again. Normally I do it in King James. This is not the King James version. It's close, but it's not exactly the same. So if you see some words, it's different. That's what it is. What happened? The people started complaining. And what happened last week? Remember? Verse 10. They'd been camping out for a year almost. So they wasn't moving. Now they've packed everything up and they're heading to where the next place is, up to the north in the valley of Paran. And the people, it's hot. They're traveling. They're getting, it's not like it was where they didn't, you could say it was more of lingering around, lounging around, maybe. It wasn't, I'm sure, but it's more tedious than it was. Because first they have to get their breakfast, get it gone, and then they have to start moving during the day. So get it gone. And during the night, the night before, they have to set up the tents. And then in the morning, after they finish, they break down the tents, and then they move again. And then they have to walk 10 miles or so a day, 10, 15 miles. So up until this time, they hadn't really complained that much. But now they have. It says, according to Allen, when the people complained could also be translated, now the people became truly murmurous, an offense to Yahweh's ears. We don't really know what the complaining was about in this particular section. It says, but surely no people had ever less cause for murmuring. They had God among them, and miracles of goodness were continually wrought in their behalf. They'd already complained back in Exodus about not having, good food. Well, they're getting manna. They're still getting manna. That for a year they've been getting manna every day. They've had plenty of water. They haven't complained about water that we know of. And they just start complaining because they're hot and tired, I think. Everybody, I guarantee you get hot and tired, and something that doesn't normally bother you bothers you pretty quick if it starts getting on your nerves type. So it says, the fire of the Lord burned among them. Now, in the King James, it said on the outskirts. So out around the edges of the camp is where it burned. And what they are saying that this was either a supernatural fire sent down from God, could have been out of the fire that was being shown at night. It could have been lightning that was striking and would hit people and set them on fire or whatever. So it's not made clear who was burnt or what was burnt on this occasion, whether it was just the shrubs or trees in the outlying areas or if it was actually people. But it scared them enough, they started coming to Moses and said, hey, we're in danger. So they came to them. It says, consumed some in outskirts of the camp. This purging fire was limited to the very outskirts of the camp, a mercy of the Lord. He might have cast the fire in the very midst of the camp and killed many more people than who had already suffered this judgment. So because of all this, they cried out to the Lord, and Moses intervened. He prayed to the Lord, and when he prayed, the fire was quenched. So they gave that area, wherever they were staying right there, the name Taberah, which means burnt. So they would remember that. Here again, why did they put names on these areas and these places?
So when they come back through, they'll remember.
So when they come back through, they'll remember it. When I was a kid, we'd go to Dawson. Well, that was a jillion miles away from Broken Arrow at that time. But I knew once we got on that road and we made that curve around that U-totem that was there, it's an air parts place now or something. I knew it was almost a church. And I remember that for 20, 30, up until now. So that's what it is. It's kind of like we name places too all the time, but we remember it for whatever reasons. So I know here they were giving them an indication. It's burning because he wanted them to remember this is where you got upset and God sent you a tan their hide a little bit. Kind of what you'd say. He wanted them to remember this. Okay, Brother Epperson, verse 4.
Didn't last very long, did it?
No, it didn't. Well, we don't know how long it lasted. It only lasted 3 verses in this thing.
Now the mixed multitude who were among them yielded to intense craving. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, who will give us meat?
Okay. They had bread, but it was manna. It was given by God. It was freely given. They had enough to eat. They wasn't hungry. But sometimes people just get upset at things, anything, no matter what. Now it does say in here that the mixed multitude. What do you think that means?
Well, for the tribes.
It is of the tribes, but it is of other people. We've mentioned it several times, and this is one of the places where I get that from. It's some of the Egyptians that came with them, some of the other peoples, other than the people that have been taught this all their life, even though they was in bondage for several hundred years, they were still carrying down those oral traditions. Very beginning of the earth, all that was laid out, people like that. Now, some of it was forgotten because Moses wrote it all down from God. And that's where we get the first 5 books of the Bible, the ones that we're studying now. But once you see the 10 plagues, and then you see, the people, you've seen, I've been praying to this God all my life, looks like a horsefly or something like that. He ain't done nothing for me. And these Jewish people over here, these Israelites, are praying to a God, and they're making, hail fall from the sky, and, frogs come up, and all this. They started believing, I'm going to go with these guys. I don't want to go with the Egyptians. Now, the Egyptians had more slaves than just the Israelites, so there's other people's slaves too, I'm sure, that wanted to get out of this living. It may have been some of the poorer Egyptians, it may have been whoever, we don't really know. So this mixed multitude was among them, and they're here, it's kind of indicating they were the ones pushing the Israelite people to say, we ain't got, this bread is getting kind of nothing. We want something else. We want some meat. That's what they also. Now they did have their herds with them. If they's real hungry, I don't get it why they didn't chop up a bullock or chop up a sheep or, and I know they didn't want to do it for a long time because every day because they wanted to have some livestock when they went into Canaan. But they were thinking, we're going to go to a land, Moses had told them, we're going to a land flowing with milk and honey, and all this thing's building it up, and they're still out here in the wilderness. They're heading towards it. I don't see any milk, I don't see any honey, I see a lot of dirt and a lot of sand. So they're starting to get a little anxious. We never do that, do we? So we are just like them, or they are just like us. It says the fact that they had such possessions, such as the cattle and the herds, would seem to suggest that they were more than adventurers. They had a certain high interest in the migration, one of curiosity, perhaps. The only thing that is certain is that they were not of the theocracy. They saw what happened with God, but they wasn't enamored with God as far as it was one of them. Because in Egypt they had bunches of gods. Okay, you could pray to whatever God you want. Everything they had a God. So to them, it's just like, okay, it's another God. I believe him. I'm going with him. He can give me food and everything. I'm going over here. Well, that part, it infected the people, the Israelites. That started, they started listening to these people. Now, yeah, he's got it right. We have been eating this bread for a year. We need a little meat to help us out. It says also it's a spiritual sense in which Israel was a mixed multitude. That is, they were not all descended from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is also true of the church today, isn't it? We're a mixed multitude. We're mixed all kinds of words, different people and everything. The Hebrew word for intense craving is tavah. It is also used in passages like Genesis 3 and 6, 1 Samuel, Job, Psalms. It's a strong desire for something pleasant, but perhaps, though not always, sinful. It would be like a delicacy. I don't know if anybody likes prime rib. I'm not a big prime rib fan. But that's, some people, they go to a steakhouse and that's what they want. They want prime rib. Or they want something real fancy. I'm not a fancy type of person. I like bologna and cheese, things like that. It's what I grew up. Yeah, it's what I grew up on. So, but these people were more into that. And here again, that played off on the people of Israel. They were slave people, and they were used to making do with what they had. These other people are being drawn away from this, and it's almost a lusting, their own desires. And that's what we're told in the very first, in the New Testament. We're drawn away from our own lusts. This is something on that. The commentator Allen says on intense craving, the verb can be used for positive and proper desires, but is especially fitting for the feelings of improper lusts and bodily appetites. And then the question that they ask, who will give us meat to eat? Says this was a strange question, considering they had a God in heaven that met their every need. It seems that some in Israel looked for another provider because they were not satisfied with what came to them from the hand of God. They were so distraught over this that they wept. One of the things that Jerry has told us, and I've seen it in other places, the missionaries, they go out on the field, and we've seen it even when we go to some houses, when we do the youth mission work. We had a youth team that we had, and we went out. It was all in Oklahoma for the most part, but we would go out and we'd spend a weekend or whatever at different people's houses in that church that we were in. And a lot of times they would fix you something or whatever, and it's like, I never ate that before. Mom never fixed that. I don't know what that is. But you still would eat it because it's what they, you know, to them, they were doing the best that they could do, whatever it was. And that's like Jerry has said, that, you know, you go out in the missionary, out in the regions, and whatever they cook, you eat. Because you don't know what it is, you don't ask what it is either most of the time, because you don't want to know. But it's what they have, and it's what is good for it. I mean, it's good for them, and they're sharing it with you. And to them, it's probably the best they can do. They're not trying to be, you know, you're their guest, so they're trying to serve you the best they can do. Now, we go to Grandma's on Sunday, and I knew what to expect. You know, we had chicken and mashed potatoes and gravy and green beans and corn and dessert and all that stuff. That's what we were used to.
When you all went vacation over there, did you ask what you ate?
We asked on some of the things because it was interesting, because of the Jews. I think I've told you this before. They would not mix milk, dairy products with meat. Okay, and we don't either, but during the meal. Like, okay, I've had my hamburger, or I've had my sandwich, or whatever I've had. Now I want some ice cream. They didn't have ice cream. They had sherbet, or they had some other yogurt stuff. I don't know really what it was. It's pretty good. But, you know, they had stuff that they, you know, frozen concoctions that we ate. So, yeah, and of course they had no bacon. Breakfast, they had no bacon, no sausage, no ham, all these things. Unless you went to an Arab, if you went to an Arab restaurant, then they would sometimes have that because they didn't care. They didn't eat it, but they didn't care. You know, they served it. And maybe they wouldn't have it either.
A lot of something they have, and they don't have.
No, they had a lot of bread and a lot of fruit. That's what they had. Yeah, that's what a lot of them ate. Our little lady that was our guide, she was pretty much vegetarian. And I don't know if she's a vegan, what the difference is between a vegan and, you know, not eat eggs and milk and all that stuff. But she would eat just her plate of vegetables. She'd eat. She wouldn't eat with us. Because again, I think that's a Jewish, you know, not eating with the Gentiles, but she'd sit over at another table and eat with the bus driver, because the bus driver would eat with us too, I mean, with our group. But every morning it's a big buffet, and they had 10 buses there, so you got all kinds of people going through a buffet getting fed. But they had eggs, they'd scramble them, they'd do whatever, fix omelets, you know, everything like they normally do here. But they had a lot of bread, different types of bread. They had yogurt. They had.
Well, they made others too.
Yeah. So yeah, it was different, but it was very good. Everything was very good.
Probably healthier sometimes than what we eat here.
Most of the time, probably. Yeah, you know, it's like anything else. Some of it's processed, so it's not real good for you. 5 and 6, Iris, read that for us. It's in the middle of page 4 there.
We remember the fish which we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our whole being is dried up. There is nothing at all except this manna before our eyes.
Okay. Leeks. Leeks is an onion, like an onion. It grows a real big head, and out the side of it, it's like a green onion, only it's big. And they cut it up, and they'll use it in soups and stuff. It gives it that oniony flavor. So it's a seasoning, much like onions or garlic are. you know, it's a seasoning, more of a seasoning, not too many. Now the onions, I said back then, was more like we would think of medallions. They were sweet, so you'd eat them, you know, with meals and everything. We had a lady down in Edmond. She'd take an onion and eat it just like an apple. You know, I don't mind a chunk of it if I'm eating fish or some other food that goes with the onion, but I don't want to eat it by myself with just by itself.
I got a girl to eat a whole bag of onions by herself.
Yeah, well, vidalias are good. I like them. Yeah. So they are remembering now, back in Egypt, the melons, which, you know, for us could be anything, could be a cantaloupe or watermelon or anything like that. That's more of a sweet dessert. Of course, the cucumbers and the fish. They lived on the Nile or around the Nile, so they had a lot of fish. And they'd catch the fish. I'm sure it wouldn't cost much, if anything, to catch the fish. They'd catch a lot of it. They'd eat it fresh, or they could dry it, smoke it, and they could have it, you know, during the season when they didn't have that. But this said, freely we ate this, and all we have now is this nasty old manna, basically. Is what they're saying.
All the time.
Yeah. Exodus 16:3 records this same way. Said they were remembered when they sat down by the pots of meat, and we ate bread to the full. It's always what you don't have. It's never what you have in front of you. Now, I never have had to eat. My dad did. I know he was raised up during the Depression. And his father died when he was like 6 or 7. So him and his brother, he had a twin brother, and grandma was left to fend for themselves. They had 80 acres, and they were sharecroppers. They would, somebody would give them, they had the land, so somebody would give them the seed, or they'd, you know, somehow get the seed, put it out, and they would, you know, work it, keep it, and then give the people back whatever they could. And then they got to keep part of it too. He said one winter they pretty much had turnip, however you could cook it, bake it, soup it, anything like that. He said, I hate turnips. Because they had it every day. That's all they had.
Oh gosh.
So, I mean, you know, when during the Depression, they didn't have much.
A lot of them awesome.
Yeah. They could eat whatever they could catch. Shoot.
Eat or go hungry.
Yeah. But because of this, that's what they're imagining in their eyes. They don't imagine what it was before they even had any manna.
Or when they get whipped all the time.
Yeah, they don't remember making the bricks. They don't remember doing all this slave work, but they remember all the food they got or didn't get. Because I'm sure they didn't get, even though it says to the full, I'm sure they didn't get to the full. If it wasn't the slaves that's saying that. So here again, it says Israel fell in love with the illusion from the past, the thought that their life in Egypt was wonderful. Okay? Instead, they should have looked for what God had for them in the future, the milk and the honey of Canaan. God's people should have had the attitude expressed by Paul in Philippians 3:13, pressing forward, looking ahead, not focused on the past. Can't change the past. It's what's done's done, and you go on about your business. So they're not even only complaining that they don't have any meat, but they're complaining that they have manna. It's like, okay, boy, if I was God, there wouldn't be no more manna.
Yeah.
You know?
Then I see what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the way you do a kid, isn't it? Okay, you don't like it so much, you'll just take it away. You don't need it. So there was 3 distinct times when Israel complained about God's provision for food. Exodus 16, Numbers 11, and Numbers 21. In 16, they complained about the lack of food. Numbers 11, they complained about the lack of variety. In Numbers 21, they are again dissatisfied with manna. So they couldn't ever be satisfied. So that means they're not pleased with God. God provided this for them. Said God will save us in his own way or not at all. Because that way, being the plan of infinite wisdom, it is impossible that we can be saved in any other way. You know, they're good at complaining, but they're not good at coming up with any answers. Do we know any people today that's like that?
They wanted handouts.
Pretty much.
And
That's
not
pretty
have-
much what
And
it
not
is.
have to do anything for
And
it.
not have to do anything for it. That's right. Okay, let's see. 7 through 9. Iris, did you read?
I just read.
Okay.
It's
Okay. Ruby?
Ruby.
Down at the bottom of page 6 there.
Okay, now the manna was black
Coriander seed,
and its color like the color of.
Bedellium.
You know what to do.
Yeah.
The people went about and gathered it, ground it on the millstone, or beat it in a mortar, cooked it in pans, and made cake of it. And it tasted like the taste of
Pastry.
food prepared with oil. And when the dew fell on the camp in the night, the manna fell. Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its color like the color.
Bedellium.
This passage
That's
and
okay.
Exodus 16 give the most detail about what manna was like and how God provided it.
Yeah, before, back in Exodus 16, it tells us a little bit about it. Here it tells us even more. Okay? Manna, to them, was the word they used when they saw it. And it's like, the word is, what is this? They didn't know what it was. So that's what they called it. What is this? Sounds silly for us today, but in the Hebrew word, it's manna. So it was, when you read that, what do you think of when they boil it, beat it, bake it, and it tastes like pastry? What kind of bread would you think was that?
Unleavened.
No? Donut. That's what I think of. Go read it. It says it's cooked in pans, made in cakes of it. Tastes like the taste of pastry prepared with oil.
Okay.
So, he's eating donuts every day. You believe that? Or pancakes. I said some people believe it's more like a pancake. Still the same thing. It's that. And it was white. It was made from little seeds. Little bitty. The manna was actually like coriander seed, which is little small
Tiny,
thing.
tiny one.
They'd gather that up, crunch it up, make a little flour out of it, mix it up, and then make it a bread. Okay, however they wanted to make it.
And then I mean, that wasn't so bad, was it?
No, they cooked it, and then they, would eat it. You could eat it by itself if you wanted to, raw. You could eat it all different places.
Ate it for 40 years.
Yeah, but that's the problem. They ate it for 40 years. Up until this time, they only ate it for a year. It'd been up to a year by now.
40 years they got tired of it.
40 years, they got tired of it. I get it, but it's free. They're not working for it except going out to gather it. It's there every morning except Sabbath.
They weren't thankful they had something to eat.
They weren't. So this section in the middle of page 7, you can read that. We've gone over this before. It talks about the manna and everything again, how it was only there. It's there every morning, and you didn't catch more than you needed to, and if you did, it rotted. And then on the Sabbath, the day before the Sabbath, you'd get it enough for 2 days, and it wouldn't rot. So, yeah, it said that, in fact, manna was an excellent provision. It was as tasty as a bread-like pastry that was cooked with oil, something like a modern-day donut or pancake. Yet manna provided all the nutrition the people of Israel needed for the long journey.
Look, that's weird. One thing to provide all they needed.
Mm-hmm. Try it. You know, try the next one, page 8 here at the top. Person.
Okay. Then Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, everyone at the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was greatly aroused. Moses also was displeased. So Moses said to the Lord, why have you afflicted your servants, and why have I not found favor in your sight, that you have laid the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I beget them, that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a guardian carrying a nursing child? To the land of which you swore to their fathers, where am I to get meat to give all these people? For they weep all over me, saying, give us meat that we may eat. I am not able to bear all these people alone, because the burden is too heavy for me. If you treat me like this, please kill me here and now, if I have found favor in your sight, and do not let me see my
Wretchedness. Wretchedness.
Yeah, I can barely see it.
Yeah, it's a little light.
That's fine.
So
So Moses wanted to die.
Moses was getting a little upset too.
Yeah.
When the people got upset, then Moses kept his cool for the most part. But here he kind of lost it a little bit. A couple of times he lost it. One time it cost him.
He's frustrated. He was frustrated.
He was frustrated. And
With
he's
all these people after him.
telling it to God. You know, why am I, you know, you called me to lead these people out. I didn't raise these people. These, you know, they're not my family. What about all this stuff? And he kind of goes on and on. But he's telling them what they say. And there in the middle it says, for they weep all over me, saying, give us meat that we may eat. Okay? That's the main crux that got what they needed. But all this is what came out of Moses. So Jesus got a little mad with some people too, didn't he? A little angry with some shopkeepers that was there in the tabernacle, there in the temple. It's human. It's human nature. Okay? Sometimes people pushes the right buttons and it just sets us off. It's hard. It's very hard to not let that get to us. But here Moses he let God have it pretty much. He's like, I'm tired of this. Now what had happened before? This kind of had happened before back in Exodus when the people was all coming to him and they had all these problems.
And why did you bring us into this wilderness to let us die?
Well, Jethro came up, his father-in-law came up and said, hey, you can't judge all these people. Won't you set some people up to do this? So this is in here, what we're getting ready to read in the next one. He set up 70 people, 70 of the elders, to help him with this. Now, why there's two different versions of this, I don't know if it went for a little while, or this is the same story mixed in. I don't know exactly. But Moses came up with, I'm not able to bear these people alone. Okay? And he went so far as Bertha said, if you're going to treat me like this, just if they're going, and he said, if you're going to treat me like this, but it wasn't God treating him that way, it was the people. But he got caught up in it himself,
Yeah.
okay, a little bit. Because he was saying,
If I'm done with this,
if they're treating, I did all this for them and now they're not even, not even gracious that I led them out of Egypt. So just kill me now, he says.
yeah, get it over with.
Yeah. So he said, in a sense, God wanted Moses to see his wretchedness, his own, the way he was talking to God right then. Rearrange this a little bit, I must have touched it. So in verse 16 and 17 it says, the Lord said to Moses, gather to me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, bring them to the tabernacle of meeting, that they may stand there with you. Then I will come down and talk with you there. I will take the spirit that is upon you and will put the same upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you may not bear it yourself alone. So in this particular case, we're told it's 70 men. The other case, we were told that it was the leaders, the captains, giving a leader over captains of 50, captains of 100, captains of 1,000. But here, it's God told them to get 70 men. Now, if you read on down in here a little bit, in the commentary, it says some say this is what started the Sanhedrin. Okay, the court of the Pharisees and Sadducees. They had 70 people plus one, I think it was, the president. So they had 70 elders that could rule over them. So this, some people think this was the starting of it. Some of the Jewish traditions see that this is where that came from. Now we don't know what that was exactly as far as he picked them. Now how he picked them, I don't know. It says Moses was not to pick those that he thought might become elders, but the ones that were already elders. Elders are made by God, but recognized by him. It says, I will take that spirit that's upon you and put that same spirit upon them. So he's getting ready to do something here in just a minute. But you know, when I was reading this, I was thinking that these 70 elders, almost every one of them perished. Because in 40 years, everybody that was 40 years older died. They died.
Oh, they'd already died.
Yeah, because when they wandered around in the wilderness for 40 years, the only ones was Joshua and Caleb and Moses. Aaron had already died, and the others that were, just about everybody else had died. So you see, even though these were picked, they still didn't enter into the promised land because of all this next 40 years or 39 years that they're getting ready to undertake. Brother Emerson, 18 through 20.
Then you shall say to the people, consecrate yourself for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and ye shall eat. Ye shall eat not 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and become loathsome to you, because you have displeased the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did you ever come out of Egypt?
Okay.
Why did we ever come out of Egypt?
So God spoke to them. He brought all the 70 together. Okay, he did that before this, but he brought the 70 together. And then he told them, not just Moses, but he told them, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow you're going to have the meat that you want. And it's going to be running out your nose. I mean, he's telling them, you're going to have it so much that you aren't going to want anything else. And I get that. Here again, I think that may have been a little bit of Moses going in there, telling them that. I don't know. But it said God spoke to them. So they're going to eat a whole month of the bread, the manna that they're still getting, but they're going to have these quail or these birds that they're going to eat for a whole month.
Well, they asked me.
They asked for meat. They did. They did.
And he gave what he wanted them to have.
Yep. Page 12 there, Iris, 21 and 23, right in the middle, up in the upper part.
And Moses said, the people whom I am among are 600,000 men on foot. Yet you have said, I will give them meat provide enough for them, or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to provide enough for them?
And read that next one too. The next.
And the Lord said to Moses, Has the Lord's arm been shortened? Now you shall see whether what I say will happen to you or not.
Okay. So Moses, he's taking it personally here, I guess. He's still not quite over it. I got 600,000, and that's the army. How in the world am I going to provide the meat for them? You told them you're going to provide meat for us, but how? And he said, don't worry about it. I'm going to provide the meat. Okay? So Ruby on the next page, 24 and 25, at the top.
So Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and placed them around the tabernacle. Then the Lord came down in a cloud, and spoke to him, and took the spirit that was upon him, and placed the same upon 70 elders. And it happened when the spirit rested upon them, that they prophesied, and although they had never done so again.
Okay. So for this particular instance, that's why I don't like this version of it, but anyway, they got a helping of what Moses had gotten up on the top of the mountain. They began to prophesy. They were prophets for this time period. But they didn't continue to prophesy. After that, they were just elders. Okay? But he was placing them out there so they could do and keep track of and help him in controlling all these people. And not controlling, but in the problems that they had. So they did that, and the Spirit rested upon them, and they prophesied. Excuse me. Bertha, the next page, 26 through 30.
But 2 men had remained in the camp. The name of one was Eldad, and the name of the other was Medad, and the Spirit rested upon them. Now they were among those listed, but who had not gone out to the tabernacle. Yet they prophesied in the camp, and a young man ran and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. So Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, one of the choicest men, answered and said, Moses, my Lord, forbid them. Then Moses said to him, Are you zealous for my sake? That all that the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit upon them. And Moses returned to the camp, he and the elders of Israel.
Okay. Now, the way they said this in the commentaries, these two guys, they were elected as elders, these two, but for some reason they didn't come to the tabernacle. It could have been that they felt unworthy to become elders. It could have been, like we studied last week, they had come in contact with a dead body, so they didn't feel like they should come to the tabernacle, to the tent, to there. We don't really know why they didn't come, but where they were at in the camp, whenever that happened, as far as the Spirit falling upon the people, it fell on them too. They were still part of that group. They still got the Spirit upon them. And one of the things that you notice here, Joshua the son of Nun, he was probably one of the elders also, because it tells him here, it says here assistant, but here again in King James, I don't think it says that. But he gets a little upset because here again, we want to follow the rules, and why are they doing it? They're not inside the tabernacle. right here by the tabernacle. What happened when Jesus was told that they had other disciples that was preaching in his name? He told them, that's great. He said, don't forbid them to do it. Who's not for us is with us. So Joshua was thinking that this is the only one way that this could happen. And Moses is telling him, I wish every one of these guys could prophesy, that the Spirit would fall upon them. So anyway, said, then all Moses returned. They went back into the camp with the elders of Israel. They all went back to where they were going to go. Now we go to the next page on 15. Now a wind went out from the Lord, and it brought quail from the sea and left them fluttering near the camp about a day's journey on this side and about a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, about 2 cubits above the surface of the ground. And the people stayed up all that night, all that day, all that night, and the next day, and gathered the quail. He who gathered least gathered 10 omers, and they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So he called the name of the place Kibroth Hattaavah, because they were buried. There they buried the people who yielded to the craving. He brought in the quail, and it was a day's journey on the east side and a day's journey on the west side. That's how much quail that was out there. And it was what they said that the 2 cubits above the surface of the ground. They said sometimes those quails come across, and it's maybe a quail like we know of, or maybe a different bird. But anyway, it was a type of quail that comes across that sea there, and they fly for a long way, and then they're tired, and they can't, they're tired out. So Lord pushed that wind and pushed them over here to where the people were, and all they had to do was go and gather them. Or they was flying, they just catch them, they wasn't above their heads, they just catch them on the ground, catch them everywhere. And some of the people was so, in my opinion, it's not really said this, but they were so wanting that meat, they just pluck it off and start eating it. Wouldn't even cook it. That's what I don't think that's what it meant, but that's, to me, because it says they still had it in their teeth, the meat was still there, the Lord broke out. The Lord gave them and told them that they were going to have enough for a month, but the people were just gorging on. You know how much an omer is? An omer is an ox load full. So the least person, the person that gathered least, had 10 ox loads full of meat. The least, So they had a lot of meat. And I think that's part of it, that we missed that they were gathering everything they could, trying to almost abuse it because it was there when God provided it for them.
Wow.
They was trying to get more than their next door neighbor, in other words, even though God had provided it.
When you study this, and even the manna, you understand more Jesus' prayer, a model prayer there where he said, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed give us this day our daily bread. In other words, we need to learn to depend on God every day, because it's him that meets our needs.
It is. We don't, we ask him for stuff, and then when he gives it to us, we're kind of surprised.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
You really did that.
Yeah, you did that. You really did that.
It's like when I read that deal, there's that checkbook. Wow.
There it is. Well, I remember putting it there now. Let's see. See this, I don't know, this version doesn't have it, but it's 35. And said, and the people journeyed from Kibroth Hattaavah unto Hazeroth, and abode at Hazeroth. So that's not in this one, but it is Numbers 11, for some reason they didn't have that in that version, or they left it out. So they had a great plague upon the people for those because of that, because they were, I guess, overzealous in gathering the birds. You know, they had that craving. They were trying to satisfy that craving that they had. And it says, when we allow ungodly cravings to rule our lives, God may send what we crave and leanness into our soul as well. Better to have a well-fed soul and deprived of ungodly cravings. You know, sometimes I get in my mind, I need something. You know, I need to do this or do that, or I need something else besides what I have. I've learned if I wait a few days, I don't need it very much. You know, I just thought, boy, I really would be nice if I had that. If I'm not careful, go out and get it, buy it, or whatever. But you got to be careful, because that's not really, it's just something that, I guess, that humanness that comes on. Well, so-and-so got another one, he got a new phone, why don't you go get a new phone? You know, or something like that. It's not needed, the one I got works, it's all this thing. So I think we need to listen to God in those things. When, you know, everything we do, we need to listen to God.
Sure.
So, well, appreciate everybody coming out tonight.
We appreciate you.
We will continue next week, I hope.
I will come back clean tonight.